Welcome to this week's game preview. Anjelica, Trinone, and Ryan Decker here in our Mountaineer Game Day studios. Number 23, West Virginia, preparing to take on Baylor. The Bears 0-6 right now, and it will be a night game underneath the lights. Kickoff is set for 8 o'clock in Waco. Before we get into that matchup, of course, let's take a look back at West Virginia's last win over then number 24 Texas Tech. So first, what a great environment. It was homecoming, striped the stadium, especially there in the fourth quarter. Fans really got into it. I'm sure you've all have seen what's making its rounds on social media. The guy that everybody is claiming for saying he's responsible for the victory, the great dancer that we had there in the fourth quarter, sure providing a lot of energy. So West Virginia able to erase an 18-point deficit and on a 29-0 run, put up 22 points in the fourth quarter to come away with a 46-35 win. So Ryan, first let's just talk about that matchup. What was different for the Mountaineers? Let's start offensively. That was there in I guess the fourth quarter that wasn't there for the first three.
They were able to run the ball a little bit better. Through the first 2+ quarters, negative 13 rushing yards. After that, they were able to run the ball a little bit better. Justin Crawford found his rhythm. Kennedy McCoy found a little bit of a rhythm. So they were able to move the ball through, or on the ground, I should say. Then Will Greer just kept doing it through the air.
Yeah, and defensively, the Dogs let 28 points in the first half and just 7 in the second. So do you think that this is a WVU defense that is, still working through some growing pains, still trying to find its identity?
Yeah, a little bit. It's just awkward that sometimes they can be there for part of the game and then not be there for another time. That sometimes they start out really well and then kind of linger in the second half, or other times it's the other way around. They're still trying to find that identity. You'd think by now with Kaiser White being healthy again, David Long being healthy, and getting some of those guys back, that now they'd be back to full strength and kind of figure everything out.
Yeah, and speaking of Kaiser White, ended the game there with a big interception. And then, of course, his brother Karan, 2 touchdowns, I believe 114 yards. So these are 2 guys that have been just so fun to watch all season. Of course, it's taken a little bit for Karan recovering from that leg injury that he suffered last year. But we had them this week on the Dana Holgerson Show, and they were telling us that so Kaiser said whenever Karan was scoring the touchdowns, he was there on the sideline cheering him on. And same thing, Karan said when Kaiser had the interception, at first he didn't know it was Kaiser, but then whenever he saw the number 8 running off the field, that it just made it that much more special to be there. So these are guys that we've seen a lot of fun stuff so far this year, and they're just really fun to watch.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I know when Karan caught that last touchdown pass in the fourth quarter, Kaiser was one of the first guys off the bench to come up to him and congratulate him on the catch. So, yeah, they're definitely kind of feeding off one another right now, and with Karan really doing a good job catching the football and Kaiser doing a really good job defending the other team's pass catchers and the other team's passer, they are a lot of fun to watch right now.
Somebody else who's a lot of fun to watch, David Sills. Leading the nation right now with 12 touchdowns. I can't even wait to see where he's going to be at the end of the season if we're already hitting, this midway point, and he's already got 12. Will Greer said post-game that he said, David's goal for the season was 10. Well, he's already got 12, so who knows what's going to happen with him.
It's amazing to think that how much better this season could look if Mario Alford hadn't been the all-time leading touchdown pass receiver just a couple years ago with 25. So David's kind of working his way to that number, but you take that away, and David's having a really great season right now, first in the nation, as you said, in touchdown catches, leads the Big 12 by 5 in that regard.
Yeah, can't wait to see where he ends up here over the next 5 or so weeks. So now let's get into Baylor. If you look back at the past couple games, like we said, they're 0-6, Coach Holgerson said on Tuesday, but if you look at the tape, they're really not playing like an 0-6 team. If you go back to the beginning of the season, I think the biggest point difference was in their loss was just 14 points, the exception being last week against Oklahoma State. So what have you seen from them so far this season?
They've definitely gotten better each game, albeit minus the Oklahoma State game, where they definitely took a big step back. Zach Smith, the quarterback, seems to have a better control of the offense than the other quarterback that they threw out there this year. John Lovett's been a decent running back for them. The biggest guy to watch out for is Denzel Mims. He's their big threat guy. 7 touchdown catches already this season, had 3 in the game against Oklahoma, so he's been a big part of the offense, and those 7 is second in the Big 12.
Yeah, Zach Smith struggling a little bit right now with turnovers. Same thing, their offensive line is struggling there too, but like you said, the run games really seem to be working for them. Got a group of receivers too. How do you think the WVU defense matches up?
I think they match up decent. I think they the biggest thing is Baylor is a big play team. They lead all of the FBS with 7 plays of 70-plus yards. WVU, just in comparison, only has 2 such plays. So the biggest thing is you've got to control the big plays. WVU hasn't given up a ton of the really big plays this year, which is good. That's a good sign going in. You just want to make sure that you don't let Zach Smith and Lovett get into a good rhythm where then they're very balanced, I should say, and then you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, and defensively, well, first it's got to go with saying that this is a team that seemed, a lot of turnover, starting a lot of redshirt freshmen, a lot of young guys on this team, so a lot of turnover there within the players as well. But defensively, the secondary seems to be where they're struggling, and things aren't going to get any easier when you've got Karan White, David Sills, and Gary Jennings coming to town if you're Baylor.
Yeah, just that Baylor Bears defense ranks 125th out of 129 teams in total defense. So that defense has not been there for them all year long, practically giving up 515 yards per game. And a lot of that, as you said, it hangs on the secondary because they've been the one giving up basically as many big plays as the offense has been getting for them.
Yeah, and if you look, WVU 0-2 in Waco, so certainly looking to change that this weekend. Going to be a great one underneath the Saturday night lights, like we said, kickoff at 8 o'clock. But with the way that things have been going, I'm not seeing the atmosphere coming into play too much into this one.
Especially coming off the loss last weekend. I think had Baylor played Oklahoma State a little bit closer, then yeah, definitely that atmosphere would have been there. But after taking a beating like that, you just kind of wonder how many people are actually going to fill up McLean Stadium.
Yeah, so West Virginia back in the top 25, sit at number 23 this week. So on the road taking on Baylor, like I said, kickoff at 8 o'clock on Saturday night in Waco. We've got a lot coming up for you this weekend on the Dana Holgerson Show, like we talked about earlier. We've got the White Brothers on the program this weekend. And also make sure to join us for Mountaineer Game Day. Still starts at 10 a.m., even though we've got that 8 o'clock kickoff. But we hope that you will join us for more on that matchup. So WVU going up against an 0-6 Baylor team. And, of course, West Virginia looks to extend its streak as, things are just really heating up here in the Big 12 Conference. So we thank you once again for joining us this week. For Ryan Decker, I'm Anjelica Trinone, and we'll see you next week.